Coming up, AOC courting obvious lie, Democrat advisor does not understand the Constitution, Bernie Sanders is not so straight after all, Hakeem Jeffries thinks Democrats are still in power, and Trump's policy on Ukraine has widespread support. AOC is in trouble with Tom Holman and tries to talk her way out of it.
You had a recent dispute, if that's the right word, with Tom Holman, the president's Homeland Security czar, so-called. You held an online forum, a Know Your Rights forum, that he didn't like. What were you doing? What was your goal as you saw it?
My job is to educate and act as a liaison of critical information to my constituents. And I was informing all of my constituents of their constitutional protections, and in particular, their constitutional protections against illegal search and seizure in the United States.
This is a real dog ate my homework type of excuse. From the body language and very careful language, you can tell that AOC is lying. She's trying to tell illegal aliens how to avoid getting detained and pretending she was giving this information to all her constituents, presumably some sort of community service announcement. This information is and was not required for American citizens or permanent residents or others lawfully in the USA. This was typical of the AOC left. They want people to break the law in favour of their political positions. She is a blatant liar. Look at the body language again.
Holman was upset, I suppose, because he felt that you were giving advice to people who were here illegally. Were you?
I was giving advice to all of my constituents.
No more to say here. It is clear to all what she was doing. She is in trouble and she knows it. If you enjoy this content, please like, share and subscribe. Then watch the Democrat insanity with lawbreakers as you see where AOC is coming from.
My condolences and all of our thoughts are with the family of the individual whose life has been lost.
Our thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of the individual who's been lost.
So our condolences go to the individual who was killed tonight.
So you have a knife-wielding offender in a shop trying to stab two individuals in the store. He was warned to drop his weapon by an off-duty police officer. He didn't. He was shot and he died. So who do you think the Boston mayor, Michelle Wu, the police chief and the DA expressed their condolences to? Remember, these are Democrats, so it's not too hard to guess. The off-duty police officer, who will probably have to relive this for the rest of his life. The two traumatized individuals that the knife-wielding man was trying to stab. No. To the families of the would-be killer. This is the depths to which the modern-day Democrat Party has sunk. Then you have Democrat Choctaw Hinojosa arguing with Scott Jennings.
He's fired the January 6th prosecutor. He's trying to fire FBI agents, 5,000 FBI agents who worked on January 6th cases. If you fire 5,000 FBI agents, we will have a terrorist attack, unfortunately.
We have elections for a reason in this country. We vest all executive authority in a president of the United States, not in an unelected bureaucracy, not in independent agencies, but in a president. The president's agenda matters. When a Republican is president, the bureaucracy resists. It has to stop.
That sounds more like a king. It does not sound like
Sounds like our
president of the United
Constitution to me.
It sounds, well, they're not upholding the Constitution.
Yeah, it's not our Constitution to impede on the spending power of Congress, for instance, and take away agencies that we authorize. So this is not constitutional at all.
But then Democrats want to sit here and complain about that, but had no issue whatsoever when Joe Biden defied the Supreme Court and continued to unilaterally pardon student loan debt. That money was all fanciful and monopoly then.
Right now, I've talked to the federal workers. This is going to do lasting damage to our country if we let these cuts go through. And so I'm going to continue to fight.
There's two parties, Dana. One wants bigger government, one wants smaller government. I think I'll take it to the midterms.
The Democrats seem not to understand that elections have consequences. They believe that only Democrat administrations have the right to follow through and act according to their constitutional powers. Republicans, on the other hand, should constrain themselves to the actions that the Democrats deem acceptable to them. As Scott Jennings says, one party believes in big government, the other small. Guess which one's which? It is evident that big government has expanded way beyond what can be supported by the hard put upon taxpayer. To have a look at this, listen to Senator Bernie Sanders.
Say that both Medicare and Medicaid made more than $100 billion in payment errors in 2023. Let me ask you, Senator, Democrats were in charge for 4 years. Should the Democratic Party have done more to address some of those issues with the insolvency of our entitlement programs?
And Trump was in power 4 years before that.
So, in an answer to a question on waste, fraud and abuse, Sanders comes up with, but Donald Trump was in power before that. The point is, Trump is doing something about the issue now, but Biden and prior Democrat administrations have done nothing whatsoever to address this catastrophe. And there was me thinking Bernie was supposed to be this honest, straightforward politician who called it as he saw it. What we get instead is just political talking points. And he carries on with lies.
But let us be very clear. What Republicans are trying to do right now is to make massive cuts in Medicaid, over $800 billion, cuts in nutrition programs which feed hungry children. Why are they doing that? Because they want to be able to use those savings to provide over $1 trillion in tax breaks for the richest 1%.
This just proves the point. He uses blatant lies about cuts to Medicaid, cuts Trump has categorically and very clearly ruled out, apart from fraud, which will have its funding cut. But Sanders uses the lie, which he should know is a lie, to press the Democrat talking point about giving tax breaks to the top 1%. As I said, I thought Sanders was an independent who speaks his mind. No, he is just a Democrat hack. And to reinforce the point about Democrats who have not realized that they are no longer in power and lost the election, listen to Hakeem Jeffries.
What we've seen from the Trump administration over the last several weeks is just a flood of unprecedented extremism and a parade of horribles that continue to be unleashed on the American people. While at the same time, the Trump administration is not focused on solving the problems of everyday Americans. We're continuing to make sure that we focus on trying to make life better for everyday Americans. Fundamentally, that's why we were sent to Washington, D.C. We have to drive down the high cost of living. We have to secure the border. We have to keep communities safe. We have to protect our dreamers and farm workers and families.
Extraordinary stuff. He lambasts the Republicans and then acts as if the Democrats have control and power over all the policy areas that he speaks of here. I think that someone should tell Jeffries that there was an election on the 5th of November and that Biden is not the president anymore. Then we have Democrat Seth Moulton absolutely losing the plot.
The President of the United States is a coward who is Vladimir Putin's puppet. And the Vice President of the United States is a pogue and a coward who is Donald Trump's puppet. And so what we just witnessed was a meeting in the Oval Office between two cowardly puppets and a hero.
Moulton calls Trump a coward. Someone who stood up in the face of a would-be assassin, blood streaming down his face. I wonder how Moulton would have behaved under fire. This indicates how pathetic Democrat talking points are. A bit of info to Moulton. If you go back and watch the video of the Oval Office meeting, you will see it was polite, but that it was Zelensky who initiated things. Joey Jones responds to Moulton.
Seth Moulton cares about those 13, mostly Marines, that were killed at Abbey Gate. I would imagine it's not a topic he broaches very often, and that is borderline cowardice, if you ask.
Right, but he gets him booked on CNN again, so maybe it's a success. Maybe.
He makes the point that Moulton said nothing about the Afghanistan debacle, which he sees as borderline cowardice. It really strikes me that all the Democrats are able to do at present is blow a lot of smoke, spin their wheels with no action at all. Pathetic. CNN's Harry Enton talks polls on Ukraine attitudes.
Just asked this is, do Americans like the way that Trump's handling his job and compare it to how they felt about Joe Biden? So this is the net approval rating. You look at Joe Biden back in 2024, he was 22 points underwater. Holy cow. You look at Donald Trump, it's just a different planet entirely. I mean, the gulf between these two is wider than the Gulf of America or Mexico, depending on which side of the aisle you stand on. He's at +2.
There has been a huge shift in American sentiment on Ukraine. By 2024, Biden's position was roundly disliked by Americans, whereas the majority support Trump's position on Ukraine. There is an awful lot of noise coming from the Democrats and their fellow travellers, but it doesn't change the facts on the ground. It is unfortunate that Zelensky thought that the Democrats represented majority American opinion. If he had, and approached the Oval Office meeting differently, he may well be further along the road to peace than he is now. Enton continues.
Americans on the Russia-Ukraine war want a quicker end of the war, but Russia keeps its captured land. Look at this, 50%, bare majority coming in here, support Ukraine's right to fight, even if it means a longer war. That's at 48. This is very, very close. But the trend line on this question is so important because that want a quick end of the war, look at this. You go back to August of 2022, it was at 31%. Now we're at 50%. I mean, that is a rocket ship upwards in terms of the Americans who want a quick end to the war, even if it means Russia keeps the captured Ukraine land.
American sentiment for the end of the war, even if Russia keeps captured territory, has changed very significantly since 2022. This represents the facts of the war on the ground. What was maneuver warfare in 2022, with hopes of Ukraine winning, has become a World War I style quagmire in which there is little movement and troops on both sides are just food for the gun. Tragically, there really was a chance in 2022, and where there should have been a rapid infusion of top-grade military equipment, Biden played drip feed with substandard military equipment at the time. This is simply a sad statement on reality. Marco Rubio closes things out on the Ukraine.
I'll be happy that we have a president who's trying to stop wars and prevent them instead of start them. And I just don't get it. I really don't, other than the fact that it's Donald J. Trump. If this was a Democrat that was doing this, everyone would be saying, well, he's on his way to the Nobel Peace Prize. This is absurd. We are trying to end a war. You cannot end a war unless both sides come to the table, starting with the Russians. And that is the point the president has made. And we have to do whatever we can to try to bring them to the table to see if it's even possible. I'm not promising you it's possible. I'm not telling you it's 90% likely. I'm saying it's 0% likely if we don't get them to a negotiating table. And the sooner everyone grows up around here and figures out that this is a bad war that's heading in a bad direction with death and destruction and all kinds of dangers surrounding it that could spiral into a broader conflict, the sooner people grow up and realize that, I think the more progress we're going to be able to make. But the president's crystal clear. He campaigned on it, and he's going to govern on it. And that is, he is going to be a president that tries to achieve peace, and he has been very clear this is a war that would have never happened had Donald Trump been in the White House, and it needs to end, and we're going to do everything we can to end it. And
Rubio's extremely powerful here. He makes very powerful points. There may be little chance of a negotiated settlement, but there's 0% chance of resolution to the war if there is no negotiation. What are your thoughts on the Democrats still not seeing that they have lost power and seeking to hamstring the Trump administration? Please let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.